Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss about electrical tongue in food science. So far we discussed about 3D printing of different materials, including ear, bone, and as well as even for a particular skin, etc. And then we saw the application of this 3D printing in the field of food science, right? Like 3D printing of food and all. So now again one more engineering application of where the biotechnology and engineering comes in together is electrical tongue in food science. So in the introduction, what I can say you is that we can have a artificial tongue. So now you know what is tongue and what are the tastes, what are the function of the tongue, right? So all we know that it is known for its taste. Okay, so usually it detects, it will have a sense of taste. Okay, so that we can distinguish various tastes, whether it is salty, whether it is sweet, bitter, sour, salty. Okay, all these different the tastes can be sensed by this particular organ, that is tongue. So now if you want to have a electrical tongue or artificial tongue, then it should have all these properties. That means it should sense. So when you speak about sense, it's about sensors, right? So when it is about sensor, it is about again electrical tongue, right? So you are going to have various sensors or arrays of sensors or a group of sensors, so that which will have particular sensors will be designed for a particular taste detection. For example, bitter, there will be one sensor. To taste sweet, there will be another sensor. To taste salty, there will be another sensor. To taste sourness, there will be another sensors. So like that we can have a combination of sensors. So that's what we can have a electrical tongue. So let's start the topic. So now the human tongue, that means the human tongue plays a very crucial role in the sense of taste, right? It senses the different tastes, so allowing us to perceive and distinguish various tastes, whether it is salty or whether it is sweet, we can differentiate. So here is an overview of how exactly the human tongue functions in sensing tastes. The first thing is we are having taste buds inside our tongue, right? So these taste buds act as a natural sensors, so they will taste the particular, they are the responsible for the particular sensing of the taste of whatever we are eating, right? So next one, we are having taste receptor cells. That means we are having the cells which will act as a taste receptors. They will act as a receptor of the taste, right? And next, the third one, taste pores. We are having a lot of pores inside our tongue, so those are called as taste pores. So that they will, whatever the taste we sense, the buds and the receptor cells receives this taste, it will pass through the pores so that it can give a signal to the neuron, that is brain. So after the third taste pores, what happens? The fourth one, binding of taste compounds. Once the taste compound binds, then the fifth one is neuronal signal. That means we are going to get the get signal to the neurons, or you can say to the brain. Next, the sixth one, taste processing in the brain. Now in the brain there will be taste processing, because our brain will remember various tastes, and depending on what neuronal signals received from binding of taste compounds, which was supported by the taste pores and received by the taste taste receptors and taste sensed by the buds. Understanding this is how exactly it flows. So finally, after taste processing in the brain, you will get the taste perception. Taste perception in the sense what taste it is, like that. Okay, so finally we will get. So these are the whole process which acts. First, initially taste senses the taste. Second one, taste receptor will receive the particular whatever the taste is there, and then that will be transported through the taste pores, and where the binding of taste compounds will happen, because after binding of this taste compounds eventually then it will be neuronal signal change will be there, and this because of the neuronal signal change because of the change, so what happens, neuronal signal will activate, and that will take this particular signal will be activated and will be given to the brain. So where taste processing will happen, and after this processing of the taste, so taste perception will be there. Taste perception means whether the brain will decide whether it is bitter, sweet, salty kind of stuff. So that was about introduction, and that's how exactly the human tongue functions. So next, the electrical tongue. What we call it as electrical tongue, definitely the electrical tongue is nothing but a device, because here synthetically you are making it is a device. So that is used for what applications? In food science. Okay, for what? To analyze taste and flavor of the food and beverages. Whatever the tongue we use for taste and flavor, right? For that application we are using. Now what is electrical tongue? It is a device used in this food science, so that we can know that what are the taste and flavors are involved. So electrical tongue ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದೊಂದು ಡಿವೈಸ್, ಅದು ಟಂಗ್ ತರ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ನಮ್ಮ ನಾಲ್ಗೆ ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ ಅದು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ನಾಲ್ಗೆ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ? ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಫ್ಲೇವರ್ ಯಾವುದು, ಫುಡ್ ಇದು ಮತ್ತೆ ಬೆವರೇಜ್ ಫ್ಲೇವರ್ ಯಾವುದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದೇ ತರ ಇದಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಗಳಿರುತ್ತವೆ. ಅದು ಪ್ರೊಸೆಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾನು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. So next, it works by measuring the electrical conductivity. Now this particular device, that is the electrical tongue, it works. That means it functions by measuring the electrical conductivity. So there are a lot of properties when the taste comes into contact with this particular binding. So what happens? There are a lot of properties that will change. Because of these changes can be sensed by the sensors, and then we can say that the taste is salty, taste is sweet kind of stuff. Okay, so here it works by measuring the electrical conductivity. These are the properties which are responsible for the taste taste for the electrical tongue. So the first one is electrical conductivity, change in its conductivity, change in its electrical currents because of this particular reactions, whatever it is, when the food is come into contact with this particular electrical tongue. Next, impedance, okay, and as well as capacitance of the food or a beverage samples, then which are related to the concentration of the ions in the sample and texture of the sample. So here these conductivity, impedance, capacitance, they all are related to the particular concentration of the samples. So whatever if imagine in the salt there is a concentration of sodium, chlorine, right? So based on these concentrations only we will have this particular stuff. Okay, so it works by measuring the electrical conductivity, impedance and capacitance. Now these three properties changes when the taste comes into contact with the electrical tongue. So that changes can be sensed by the sensors, and we can say that the electrical tongue can give its perception that whether the taste is salty, sweet or bitter. So this technology allows for the rapid and non-invasive analysis of the food and beverages, and it does not require any human taste testers. So it can be used for non-invasive analysis. Non-invasive in the sense our tongue doesn't, natural tongue no need to use for the food and beverage testing purposes. So instead the electrical tongue provides a numerical representation of the taste and flavor of the sample. So what happens here? Whatever the tongue we are tasting, that will give the numerical values. For example, if I am having the salt, if you are testing the salt with this particular artificial device, what happens? It will give some particular number. Okay, a numerical representation. That means 10% of salty or 20% of salty. If this food contains 50% of salt or 10% of salt kind of stuff. So that numerical representation of the taste will be there and flavor of the sample will be there. So which can be used to compare and analyze the different foods and beverages. So in this aspect, in this point, we can have the better applications of electrical tongue than the natural tongue, because we will be getting the exact calculations based on the whatever the molecules are present in the sample. ಆಯ್ತಾ, ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಟಂಗ್ ಅನ್ನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಇದು ಡಿವೈಸ್ ಅನ್ನ, ಈ ಡಿವೈಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದೆಲ್ಲ ಫುಡ್ ಐಟಮ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಂಪೋಸಿಷನ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಇದು ನ್ಯೂಮರಿಕಲ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ಈಗ 10% ಸಾಲ್ಟ್ ಇದೆ, ಸಾಲ್ಟ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ನಾವು ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದೆ, ಎಷ್ಟಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಟಂಗ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅಡ್ವಾಂಟೇಜ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಟಂಗ್. So technology, what exactly the technology which is behind the electrical tongue? So we need to know the technology behind this. So the first and foremost technology is to measure the electronical properties or electrical properties. That's why it is called as electrical tongue. So the technology behind the electrical tongue involves the measurement of electrical properties. So we saw the impedance, capacitance, conductance. These all are what? These all three are the electrical properties. Okay, and this particular electrical properties of what? It should be food or beverage samples. Okay, so the electrical tongue typically consists of sensor arrays, that means group of sensors which is placed in contact with the food or beverage samples. Why we need to have the arrays of sample? Because in our tongue has to taste various multiple samples, multiple components in the sample. For example, whether it is salty, for salty it will be one sensor, for sweetness there will be another sensor, for bitter taste there will be another sensor, for sourness for sour another sensors. They are all different sensors will be there that will have the impact. That's why we should have the group of sensors. ಸೊ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಬ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಟಂಗ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಬೇಸ್ಡ್ ಆನ್ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟೀಸ್. ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟೀಸ್ ನಾವು ಹಿಂದೆ ನೋಡಿದಾಗೆ ಇಂಪಿಡೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಂಡಕ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಆಮೇಲೆ ವಾಟ್ ಎಲ್ಸ್ ವಿ ಸಾ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇದು ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ಆ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಯಾವಾಗ ಫುಡ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆದಾಗ. ಸೊ ಆ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಸೆನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಒಂದೇ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಗ್ರೂಪ್ ಆಫ್ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾನೇ ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ಫೈಂಡ್ ಔಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. So next, sensor array used in electronic tongue applications. There are a lot of sensor arrays, means refers to the collection of the multiple sensors. As I just told you, it is designed to detect and measure the different tastes. So these different tastes are need to be developed. That's why we are having different sensors. That is why we need multiple sensors. ಅರ್ಥ ಆಯ್ತಲ್ಲ, ನಮಗೆ ಒಂದೇ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ ಇಂದ ಕೆಲಸ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ ಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಆಫನ್ ಸ್ಪೆಸಿಫಿಕ್ ಟು ದಿ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಕಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಒನ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ ವಿಲ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಫಾರ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಒನ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಒನ್ ಟು ಚೆಕ್ ಒನ್ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ like that. So that's why we are having the group of sensors or arrays of sensors. So here are some of the examples of the sensor types which are used in the tongue. So there are majorly 6 types of sensor we will use in the tongue. So first one, the potentiometric ion selective electrode. So this sensor, the potentiometric ion selective electrode, is used to detect the taste detection. So how? Because here are the ion selective in the sense they are highly selective to the particular molecule. If it is sodium, it's again you will get the salty like that. If it is any glucose present, then you will get sweet like that. So potentiometric ion selective electrodes, that is for the taste detection. Next, voltammetric sensors. So these are also can be used to measure the electric current here. So here it is indirectly we are measuring the taste here. How? First you are going to check the electric current. So if there is any changes in the electrical current, based on the standard or optimization device, we will be having, if this data, if you are getting this current, then it is salty. If this current, then it is sugar kind of stuff. So measures electric current during redox reactions. During the reduction, oxidation process, what happens? Electron transfer will be there, no? So that is itself will give you electric current. Now you can measure this electric current, and we can have the voltammetric sensors, and we will say that what kind of taste it is. Next, impedance sensors. So here it measures the changes in electrical impedance, which is caused by the interaction of the taste of the foods with the sensor surface. We have a surface, we have a taste of the food, and whatever the surface in the sense here the device, so like a tongue. So whatever the changes will be there, that will be interaction. Because of the interaction, there will be change in electrical impedance that can be measured. Next, optical sensors. So here what happens? Sometimes what happens? It can be used to measure the light absorbance or fluorescence, which is caused by the specific taste foods. For example, some particular taste of the food will give you a kind of light absorption or a fluorescence, okay, effect. That means it will give you kind of color kind of stuff. So that can be detected by using optical sensors. Next, conductometric sensors. So here, as the name itself, it is there. It should be based on the conductance. That means it detects the change in the electrical conductivity which are resulting from the interaction of the taste compounds with the sensor surface. So when the sample come into contact with the sensor surface, so there will be change in the electrical conductivity. Based on the change in the electrical conductivity, the conductometric sensors can detect it, and based on the values which is already fixed like a constants. Okay, so we can identify the particular taste. Next, mass sensitive sensors. Obviously here it is based on the mass. So it measures changes in the mass, or mass in the sense the weight, or resonance frequency. So two things you need to remember: mass or resonance frequency, which is caused by the absorption of the taste compounds. When these taste compounds which are present in the given sample come into contact with the electronic tongue, the absorption of the taste compounds will be there. Absorption, you know, right? Absorption in the sense AB, absorption in the sense taking inside. Absorption means just deposition on the particular surface. Whenever it is coming and depositing on the surface of the tongue, so there will be change in resonance frequency, which is lead to or mass. So because of the change in the mass or resonance frequency, you can use the mass sensitive sensors. So these are the 6 sensors. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವೇನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಅರೇಸ್ ಮಲ್ಟಿಪಲ್ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕಂಪೋನೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಪೆಸಿಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಪೊಟೆನ್ಷಿಯೋಮೆಟ್ರಿ ಇದನ್ನು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಡಿಟೆಕ್ಷನ್ಗೆ. ವೋಲ್ಟಾಮೆಟ್ರಿಕಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ರಿಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಆಕ್ಸಿಡೇಷನ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಉತ್ಪಾದನೆ ಆಗುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಕರೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ ಮೆಜರ್ ಮಾಡೋ ಮೂಲಕ ವೋಲ್ಟಾಮೆಟ್ರಿಕ್ ಸೆನ್ಸರ್ಸ್ ಟೇಸ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಡಿಟೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು. ಹಾಗೆ ಇಂಪಿಡೆನ್ಸ್, ಆಪ್ಟಿಕಲ್, ಕಂಡಕ್ಟಿವ್, ಮಾಸ್ ಸೆನ್ಸಿಟಿವ್, they follow the same thing. So next, materials which are used in the electrical tongue technology. So for examples, we are having few examples here. What are the materials which can be used in this particular technology? Definitely the first and foremost material will be the polymers, because whatever it is related to the humans, it is about polymers, because most of our body, we are having the cells which are resembles the structure of polymer. That's why if you are going for any synthetic devices or any systems, if you are making for a particular biological applications, use polymers. So polymers such as PVA, that is polyvinyl alcohol, and polyethylene oxide, that is PEO. These two polymers are often used for as a substrate or a matrix material in electrical tongue sensors. So it will use as a substrate or a matrix material, or you can simply say that it will be used as a tongue in the structures what we are having like a tongue. So the polymers will be used as a tongue, as they have high sensitivity to changes in the ion concentration, or and also flexible. So why they use? Because of the two properties. Why they use the polymer? Because of the two properties. One is flexible, that all of you know, our tongue is flexible, so that the polymer is also flexible, so that we can use it as a matrix material or a substrate. Another thing is high sensitivity. So that means they are very highly sensitive. Polymers are highly sensitive for any changes. Okay, so that's why the polymers are the primary important materials for the electrical tongue. Next, metal oxides. So metal oxide, for example, tin oxide and as well as zinc oxide, these are commonly used in electronic tongues. Why? The reason is they are having very high sensitive to the changes. For the what changes? Ion concentration. This ion concentration is the key factor, where in the sample, if any what molecules are present, how you are going to detect based on the ion concentration and ability to undergo the chemical changes. If any change, and also this particular tin oxide and zinc oxide, they can also undergo to the chemical changes in electrical conductivity in response to the different tastes, so that it can give you the better taste detection efficiency. So next, carbon nanotubes. So carbon nanotubes are well known for their conductivity. They are highly, so far in the world, so far whatever the materials have been discovered, the highest conductive material on earth is carbon nanotube. So nanotubes are nothing but whatever here diameter should be in the scale of nanometer. It should be less than 100 nanometer. Okay, length which can be in microns. So they are responsible for high electrical conductivity and sensitivity to changes of ionic concentration. Every material which is responsible for the change of ion concentration can be used for materials as in electrical tongue. Why? Because we need, because of when the sample come in contact with the electrical tongue, ion concentration it should detect. So it changes in so whenever it comes into contact, so they will be they should be higher sensitive to it, so that if ion concentration come into contact, there will be change in the carbon nanotubes electrical conductivity. That electrical conductivity can be measured by the sensors. Next, dendrimers. Dendrimers, again, they are nanostructures. Here they are branched nanostructures. Dendrimers will simply look as a almost a sphere kind of structure, but inside there will be branch, like like how the trees branches will be there, like that many branches will be there, n number, 100 to thousands of branches will be there. So that can be functionalized. Functional means we are going to attach some particular specific receptors, then only we call it as a functionalizing. So these specific receptor or enzymes are responsible for to detect taste, ionic concentration or a taste understanding. So when you are having fixing the specific receptor or enzymes, whenever the sample come into contact, there will be change in the structure of these dendrimers, and that can be used by the sensors to sense the taste. Next, microfluidic devices. The microfluidic devices, which are actually small molecules, that's why it is called as a microfluidic, that can manipulate small volumes of fluid. Even though small volumes of fluid is there, that can be manipulated by these microfluidic devices. So that's why they are called as microfluidic devices. So they are used in development of electrical sensors. So now these devices can be made from variety of materials. You can use silicon, you can use glass, polymers, and also that can be again functionalize it. Functionalization is nothing but what? If I have one material, but that is not functional unless and until if I attach some other material to that. So here attachment or the functionalization of a specific receptors or enzymes, so that these receptors and enzymes will change, undergo change whenever the ion concentration come into contact or any sample come into contact. Based on that, we are going to use. So that is about microfluidic devices, dendrimers, carbon nanotubes, metal oxides, polymers. So ಈ 5 materials ಅನ್ನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ಕೋತೀನಿ. It is very simple. Next, comparison. Comparing the particular human tongue and electronic tongue in the respective some aspects. What are the aspects here? There are almost 8 aspects, 7 to 8 aspects we have discussed here. The first one is sensing mechanism. In human tongue, we know that taste buds are there, that we already saw in the first slide itself. So that taste buds on the tongue, it will detect the taste compounds. So next, electrolytical tongue. How it detects? It detects based on the chemical properties or patterns, change in the chemical reactions or properties, that it will detect. Sensors will detect that. Okay. In taste perception, how? So here in taste perception, we will directly, after tasting, our brain will tell it is sweet, salty, sour, bitter, umami, or whatever it is. Whereas here in electronic tongue, we are having the programmed, this particular tongue is programmed to detect various taste qualities. Why? How? Because of the presence of n number of, the arrays of sensors, different sensors for different taste. Next, sensitivity. So here they are sensitive to the lower concentration of taste compound. That means if a lower concentration is there, that also can be detected. Here electron sensors can have high sensitivity to detecting minute differences in chemical properties. That means you should be having the electrical tongue should be having they should be highly sensitive. Okay, materials used in the electrical tongue should be very sensitive to detect the particular chemical properties. If any small changes also there, that should be detected, right? For that we need to have high sensitive materials. Next, subjectivity. So here perception of the taste is very subjective and very individual. For example, a particular food, I say it as a it is too much salty is there, but some other person will say that salt is not so much, it is okay, the food is okay. And someone will say that this sweet is too much sweet in this. But the same sweet, if it is tasted by the another person, he will tell that no, they are not much sweet. You might have experience with your friends. ನಿಮಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಏನಾದರೂ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಾಗ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ ತಿಂತಾ ಇರುವಾಗ ಒಬ್ಬ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಇದು ತುಂಬಾ ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ಇದೆ, ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ಬ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಸ್ವೀಟ್ ಏನಿಲ್ಲ, ಅಷ್ಟೇನಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. So this is called individual. In human tongue, it is individual. The taste is subjective to individual. Whereas electronics tongue, it doesn't differentiate. So whatever the objective and this thing is there, that is standardized measurements here. It is not for one particular one sensor there is different mechanism, another sensor different mechanism. It is same for all. Next, limitations. So here what are the disadvantages of human tongue? So human taste perception can be influenced by the factors like smell, texture, okay, temperature, personal preferences. It depends on the personal preferences. We can say that salty or not salty. Again, ambiguity based on the smell, temperature. Also, the taste will vary. Whereas electronic tongue may not fully capture the complete complexity and as well as nuisance of the human taste perception. Here, disadvantage of the electronic tongue ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, so it doesn't really capture all the properties of human tongue. That means it cannot behave exactly like human tongue. Okay, it can try to mimic maximum at concept but not completely. So that was the limitation of electronic tongue. So throughout. So here human testing is relatively slow process. Here it is very slow in human processing. After having this thing, all the 6-7 procedures should be done, then only will come to know. Whereas electronic tongue can analyze multiple samples simultaneously. That means you give the salty, sugar and bitter at once. All the sensors will tell you that there is a bitterness, there is so much percentage of bitterness, so much percent of salty, so much percent of sugar, like that. So maintenance and calibrations. In human tongue, no need to maintain. Obviously, while doing brush and all, you need a little bit clean, that's it. But you don't have to maintain with some extra additional cost. Whereas electronic tongue requires calibration. That means every time you use, after 1 month, twice, twice in a month or twice in a year, you need to calibrate. Calibration is nothing but to check whether the device is working still or properly or not, for its accuracy and consistency, so that it will give the exact values. There should not be any errors in results. So applications. Finally, applications. Human taste testing is commonly used in food and beverage industries for sensory evaluation and quality control. Every food industry will have one department called as quality control. These people will have a certain group of people. They will come and taste the food, and then they will tell that this particular. Then they will give the the percentage how good this food is. Whereas electronic tongue is used in various applications. You can use it for food, beverage analysis, or even quality control and flavor profiling. All these applications you can use for the electronic tongue. That was about comparison between the human tongue and the electronic tongue. Advantages. What are the advantages of electronic tongue? First one is non-invasive. You don't have to use the human tongue for this. Here you are having electrical tongue, which is non-invasive technology, meaning that it does not require human testers. It doesn't need any human testers here. So this reduces the risk of contamination. So what happens when you are tasting a food? Sometimes there will be a contamination. So that can be avoided here. So it allows for rapid and consistent analysis of the food and beverages. That means faster. If for example, imagine you have developed tons of food. Okay, now you need to check for all that. So the people cannot keep on eating all the samples and tasting, right? So it requires a lot of time. Whereas the electrical tongue does that function within few hours. Next, high throughput. The electrical tongue can analyze multiple samples in a short period of time. So whereas our tongue cannot do that. So objective analysis. So objective analysis means it will give you the percentage, like numerical representation of the taste and flavor. So much percentage of salt is there, so much percent of sugar is there, kind of stuff. Okay, and also it can be used for objective comparison and analysis of different products. Next, cost effectiveness. So electrical tongue is relatively low cost technology, which is compared to the other methods in food, beverage and beverage analysis. Limitations. The first limitation is limited sensory experience. So since the electrical tongue is only measures the limited number of the aspects of the taste or flavors, it cannot copy the natural tongue completely or fully. So that was the first thing. Next thing is incomplete understanding. Since this particular the technology behind electrical tongue is still under developed stage, there should be more research involved, should be done, so that we can have complete understanding. So that's why it is incomplete understanding is there. That is another disadvantage. Next, interfering factors. There are a lot of interfering factors are there which are influenced for this particular food and beverage samples. What are those? Temperature can influence, humidity, storage conditions, all those can influence. Because of these, if any changes in temperature, humidity and storage conditions, then there will be change in the food and the beverage, and that will lead to the error in the results, whatever the sensors is giving the results. Next, calibration issue. So calibration issue is the major issue. The electrical tongue requires continuous calibration should be done to check its consistency and accuracy, and also calibration proceeds may take time consuming. It also may need to be repeated regularly to maintain the accuracy of the analysis. So that's it about this topic, and in the next class we can study about electrical noise.